You know how sometimes it don't take a long explanation to make history. It don't take a whole sentence to move mountains. Sometimes all it takes is one word to flip the script, one word to send shockwaves through the most powerful rooms in the world. And in this case, that one word came straight from Dr. S. Jaishankar, not with anger, not with fear, but with calm, with clarity, and with confidence that only comes when you know your country ain't backing down anymore. Now let me take you back, because this ain't just about a press conference or a tweet. This is about power, real power. You see, when Donald Trump was riding that wave of Make America Great Again, he wasn't just looking at China. He had his eyes locked on India too. At first, it looked like he was reaching out a hand of friendship, but behind that handshake was a strategy to keep India in check, to mold it into a junior partner. Trump thought he could play that old game again, flash a few deals, wave a couple of defense contracts, offer symbolic praise, and expect India to fall in line like it always used to. But he forgot, this ain't that old India. This ain't the land that bows to pressure, not anymore. Because when Trump tried to corner India over trade imbalances, when he tried to threaten with tariff hikes, when he thought he could pull strings over Kashmir, over defense partnerships, over oil deals, he expected silence. Or maybe submission, but what he got, what he never saw coming, was Jaishankar, calm, collected, and dangerous in the quietest way possible. When Trump tried to humiliate India by stripping it of GSP benefit, trying to punish India for not opening up every market or bending over to American pharma giants, Washington thought they'd get a reaction. Maybe desperation, maybe negotiation. Instead, Jaishankar stepped up and dropped one word that echoed not just in D.C., but in capitals all across the globe. That word, reciprocity. That's it. Just one word, but in that one word there was a storm, because reciprocity isn't just vocabulary. It's a statement, a declaration, a message that India's not here to be anyone's charity case or junior partner. Reciprocity means you treat me how I treat you. You give me what I give you. No more special favors. No more one-sided deals. If you raise tariffs, we raise tariffs. If you ban our tech, we'll ban yours. If you think you can twist our arm, be ready for your wrist to be turned too. Trump, for all his bravado, wasn't ready for that. Because here was India, a nation once labeled as developing, now saying, we're not playing your game, we're setting the rules ourselves. And coming from Jaishankar. That wasn't just diplomacy, that was a power punch in a velvet glove. Let's be real, Trump was a master negotiator in his own mind. He knew how to walk into a room, flip the table, and get what he wanted. But he underestimated the one thing about Indian leadership today. They ain't desperate for approval. They're strategic, surgical, calculated, and Jaishankar. He's the calm in the middle of a geopolitical storm. See, when Trump talked tough about forcing allies to choose between America and its enemies, India didn't choose sides. India chose itself, and Jaishankar made it clear India's partnerships are based on interest, not pressure. You can't intimidate a country that's finally realized its worth. That one word, reciprocity, triggered a chain reaction. Trump's administration realized something crucial. They can no longer take India for granted. And the world took notice. From Russia to France, from ASEAN to Africa, leaders started leaning in. They saw an India that had outgrown its role as the world's back office and stepped into the center stage as a decision maker. You think that was the end of it? Nah, that was just the beginning, because what followed was India pushing back harder than ever. When Trump pushed India to shut down its oil imports from Iran, trying to isolate Tehran, India pushed back with national interest at the forefront. Jaishankar didn't shout, he didn't argue, he just reminded the world, India makes decisions based on strategic autonomy. That's a fancy way of saying we listen to everybody, but we obey nobody. And when Trump tried to play the "we'll mediate Kashmir" card, thinking he could gain favor in Pakistan and control the subcontinent's narrative, Jaishankar shut that down cold. One firm line: there is no role for third-party mediation. That wasn't just a slap. That was a closed door, locked with the key thrown away. See, this was a turning point. India wasn't just resisting anymore. It was redefining the entire dynamic. Under Jaishankar's vision, foreign policy became India first. Not anti-America, not pro-China, not anti-anyone, but purely pro-India. That's what Trump couldn't digest, because here was a nation refusing to pick sides, refusing to be manipulated, refusing to be part of some Cold War II. Zero drama. Trump tried to build a transactional relationship. Give this, take that. But India, under Jaishankar, was playing chess while Trump was still playing poker. The board was different. The game was different. Now let's talk about defense. Oh, Trump loved to sell weapons, tanks, planes, missiles, you name it, and yeah, India bought some, but then Jaishankar turned the table once again. He said India will only buy what aligns with its long-term strategic needs. And guess what happened? India started building its own hypersonics, anti-satellite tech, aircraft carriers, drones, BrahMos, Akash. Trump's plan to make India a long-term buyer, it crumbled because Jaishankar was saying loud and clear, India ain't the customer. India's the creator now. That's how that one word shattered everything Trump had lined up. Because reciprocity meant India now expected equal treatment, no more exceptions, no more being lectured to, no more being summoned. This shook up the think tanks in Washington. Suddenly, the Pentagon had to rethink its Indo-Pacific strategy. The State Department had to reassess its tone. Every policy memo had to consider this new India, an India that had shed its skin and grown armor. Even Trump's own officials admitted India is no longer predictable, and unpredictability is dangerous for someone who always wants to stay in control. Let me tell you something, when a country like India realizes its value, the whole global table trembles. And Jaishankar didn't just speak for India, he spoke as India, no theatrics, no drama, just precision and power. You know why that worked? Because the world's tired of bullies, it's tired of overreach. And Jaishankar showed you don't need to scream to be heard. Sometimes all you need is one word, spoken with conviction, spoken with strength. And that word becomes a declaration of independence. Reciprocity told the world, India doesn't do subordination. We don't chase allies, we build partnerships. And if you don't respect that, step aside. It's not just about trade, it's not just about weapons, it's about dignity. That's why this moment, this one word, became so legendary. Because it wasn't just a response to Trump, it was a warning to every power that tried to treat India like a side character. From that day forward, global leaders started addressing India differently. You could see it in their tones, in their visits, in the way they engaged. They knew now that India wasn't sitting at the table for scraps. It was there to flip the whole table if necessary, and Trump. For all his deals, for all his tough talk, for all his pressure tactics, he walked away realizing something. The India he tried to shape had already outgrown his mold. This wasn't about revenge, it wasn't about rebellion. It was about respect. Jaishankar didn't need to insult anyone. He didn't need a megaphone. He just used the weight of history, the strength of 1 billion people, and the silence of 1,000 years of endurance, and channeled it into one powerful statement of equality. He shattered Trump's plan not by fighting, but by refusing to kneel, not by shouting, but by standing firm. And now the world follows India's cues. That's the power of transformation. That's the power of clarity. That's the power of one word from a leader who knows exactly who he represents. Because you can't bully a country that knows who it is. You can't shake a nation that's already grounded in its purpose. And you definitely can't isolate a people who've already built their own center of gravity. Jaishankar didn't just reject Trump's offer. He reset the global narrative without anger, without fear. Just one word. That's all it took. When the world watches global leaders speak, it often fixates on volume, on drama, on power plays that scream dominance. But real power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it sits quietly across the table and says one sentence that rewrites entire strategies. That's exactly what happened when Dr. S. Jaishankar calmly looked the world in the eye and delivered a message not wrapped in aggression or submission, but in balance. His calm rejection of high-pressure diplomacy didn't just block a proposal. It shifted the way the world engages with India. It told the international community something they had been slow to accept. India doesn't beg, it balances. Now see, this didn't come out of nowhere. For decades, India was treated as the swing vote, the middle ground, the one to be persuaded. In the Cold War, it was expected to choose between superpowers. In the age of globalization, it was expected to accept economic dependencies. And under leaders like Trump, India was expected to show gratitude for access, partnerships, and deals. But Jaishankar, he came with a new blueprint. One that said India is not a vote to be won, it's a force to be understood. He wasn't interested in who shouted the loudest or who flexed the hardest. He was interested in equilibrium. Trump's strategy toward India was built on a few assumptions. First, that India would want proximity to American power more than strategic independence. Second, that India would trade its autonomy for defense deals and praise. Third, that India could be leveraged, pressured to make choices favorable to U.S. interests, especially when it came to issues like China, Iran, and Russia. But all those assumptions collided with a diplomat who doesn't react emotionally, who doesn't negotiate with ego, and who doesn't speak unless the words serve a purpose. Jaishankar shattered those expectations not with fury but with firmness, not with escalation but with poise. During one of the most pivotal geopolitical moments in recent history, when Trump's administration was turning up the heat, whether on trade, tariffs, oil imports, or defense alignments, Jaishankar didn't buckle. He didn't rush to please, he didn't over-explain. Instead, he calmly rejected pressures that didn't align with India's national interest. And in that rejection, he offered a deeper message: India will engage, but it will never be cornered. When America tried to muscle India out of its oil relationships with Iran, thinking sanctions and threats would do the job, many expected India to fall in line. After all, Iran was a crucial supplier and the U.S. was offering waivers like they were gifts, but India wasn't interested in conditional autonomy. Jaishankar reiterated that India's choices would be driven by national interest, not fear, not dependency, not alignment for the sake of optics. That cool, headed stand said more than 1,000 fiery speeches could. Take the situation with Russia. Trump's administration pushed hard against India's S-400 missile defense deal with Russia, threatening sanctions under COTSA. The world held its breath, waiting to see if India would bow. Would New Delhi abandon its strategic partnership with Moscow to avoid American disapproval? The answer came without shouting, without headlines. It came in a simple, composed stance. India has historical ties, and it will not be dictated to. It will evaluate decisions based on merit, not on outside expectations. Once again, Jaishankar's diplomacy was surgical. He acknowledged concerns, but never compromised India's path. That was balance, not defiance. You could feel the discomfort in Washington. They weren't used to this kind of resistance, especially not from countries they saw as allies. The thing is, the U.S. often confuses alliance with submission, but Jaishankar made it crystal clear. India's foreign policy isn't about picking sides, it's about picking balance, and in that balance, India finds strength. It finds leverage, it finds independence. Even in matters like trade, Trump went on the offensive, removing India from the generalized system of preferences GSP, thinking economic pressure would bring India back to the negotiating table with concessions. But India didn't come back with desperation. It came back with proportionate tariffs, with negotiation based on equality. Jaishankar didn't chase after reinstatement like it was a lifeline. He saw it as a shift in dynamics, and he adjusted the balance accordingly. That's what nations with dignity do. They don't beg to be included. They adapt and build stronger from within. One of the most powerful illustrations of this balancing act came during the storm over Kashmir. When Trump boldly claimed that Prime Minister Modi had asked him to mediate on Kashmir, it sent shockwaves through international media, a U.S. president claiming to be a potential peacemaker in a conflict as sensitive and sovereign as Kashmir. That was overstepping, but again, Jaishankar didn't respond with noise. He didn't storm into headlines. He simply and firmly stated that there is no role for third-party mediation, period. No elaborate justification. No dramatics. Just a clear boundary rooted in national sovereignty. That one line dismissed Trump's statement and reinforced India's red lines, all while maintaining diplomatic composure. This is the new India. One that doesn't scream but doesn't compromise. One that doesn't need constant approval because it knows its direction. Jaishankar's role in shaping this posture can't be overstated. He's the embodiment of strategic restraint. In a world where leaders use chaos as a tool, he uses clarity. In a world where power is often displayed through threats, he displays it through balance. India today engages with Russia, the United States, Iran, the EU, Japan, Israel, and even China when necessary. Not because it is confused, but because it is confident. Strategic autonomy is not about neutrality, it's about flexibility. It's about recognizing that the world isn't black and white, east or west, ally or enemy. It's a complex, interdependent system where influence is earned, not demanded. Trump, in his typical transactional style, never quite understood that. He believed that deals, praise, and pressure would bring India closer to the American orbit. But what he encountered instead was a country that had learned from decades of dependency and was no longer willing to play that game. Jaishankar didn't raise his voice, he didn't burn bridges, he simply stayed the course, and in doing so, he reminded the world that India is a sovereign, thinking power not a pawn. Let's talk about the Quad, this strategic dialogue between the U.S., India, Japan, and Australia. Trump's administration was eager to use it as a containment mechanism for China, but India's involvement in the Quad was never about joining someone else's containment policy. Jaishankar made it clear the Indo-Pacific strategy has to be inclusive, not exclusive. India will participate, but on its own terms. It won't be used as a pawn in someone else's rivalry. That's balance. Even in the face of military aggression on the line of actual control from China, India didn't run to Washington asking for rescue. It didn't use the conflict to beg for arms or defense guarantees. It handled the crisis with its own resources while strengthening global ties, not depending on them. This wasn't weakness. It was calculated strength. Trump may have wanted India to play a louder anti-China role, to make headlines, to join a new Cold War. But India's leadership saw through that and stayed focused on strategic equilibrium. Balance also means knowing when to listen and when to speak. Jaishankar listens far more than he talks, and when he talks, the world leans in, not because his voice is loud, but because his words carry weight. In an era where political noise drowns out reason, his method is revolutionary. He doesn't speak to impress, he speaks to define, and in doing so, he repositions India not as a satellite, but as a sovereign pole in the global power matrix. This kind of balancing act requires immense discipline. It's not passive, it's deliberate. India doesn't burn bridges with the West, but it doesn't abandon the East either. It doesn't reject alliances, but it never makes them blindly. Whether it's defense procurement, energy security, or technology partnerships, Jaishankar's policy is clear. Evaluate everything through the lens of India's strategic needs, not someone else's expectations. So when Trump and his team tried to box India into their vision of what an ally should be, they were met not with rebellion, not with emotion, but with calm rejection. A quiet but firm refusal to compromise sovereignty for favor. And that shook the entire equation. India today isn't looking to be aligned. It's looking to be respected. It doesn't want to be caught in someone else's game. It wants to build its own playbook. And that's exactly what it's doing. Whether it's through global South engagement, vaccine diplomacy, digital public infrastructure, or defense self-reliance, India is showing that it doesn't need to chase power, because it's already seated at the table. This calm rejection of pressure, this quiet assertion of balance, is perhaps the most dangerous form of resistance for old-school power brokers. It's not noisy, it's not reactionary, it's sustainable. And because it doesn't look like rebellion, it's harder to counter. It's diplomatic aikido, redirecting the force of the other without engaging in a fight. Jaishankar didn't just reject Trump's expectations. He exposed how flawed they were. He exposed a mindset that saw India as a tool, not a partner, and in that exposure, he forced a reset not just in U.S. policy, but in global perceptions. Now other countries are following suit. They're watching how India maneuvers and realizing that independence is not isolation, that being assertive doesn't mean being aggressive, that rejecting unfair terms is not being